Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into another deep dive.
Always ready to explore these fascinating ideas.
Well, today we're taking on human nature itself. We're cracking open Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature.
Oh, this is a good one. Green doesn't hold back.
Not at all. We're going to be wading into the deep end of manipulation, hidden desires, and motivations.
The whole dance of power and perception.
Exactly. And you know me, I love getting to the bottom of things like that.
What I really appreciate about Green's approach is that he brings these laws to life. He uses all these vivid historical examples and
Psychological insights.
yes, it makes it all feel so relevant, to our lives.
It's true. Like he's giving us this secret decoder ring to understand everyone around us a little bit better. But maybe we should start with one of the most intriguing parts of the book,
Okay, sure.
the shadow. Now, it sounds a little ominous, right? Like something out of, I don't know, like a Gothic novel or something.
Well, it's not exactly a supernatural being or anything,
Hmm.
but it can definitely feel that way sometimes.
Okay, so what is it then?
Well, think of it as this hidden part of ourselves, the place where we keep all those desires and emotions and impulses that we just, I don't know, deem unacceptable or that make us feel maybe a little insecure. It's like this,
Like mask we wear.
yeah, like a mask or like an imprint on our character, formed by all these repressed experiences and buried deep down in our subconscious.
So if it's hidden, how are we supposed to even know it's there? Like, what are the signs?
Okay, well, have you ever met someone who's like way too vocal about something? Like they're always going on and on about how honest they are or how rational they are.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, that might be a clue that, that they're overcompensating for the opposite, like a big flashing sign that the shadow is at play.
I see. So it's like they're projecting an image that's completely opposite of what's actually going on underneath.
Bingo.
And if we can start to recognize these patterns, then we can understand the people around us on like a much deeper level.
Yes.
But what about our own shadow? How do we stop it from like sabotaging our efforts and, our relationships and everything?
Right, so Green says that trying to suppress the shadow just makes it stronger.
Okay, that makes sense.
The key is to acknowledge it and try to understand where it comes from and then, maybe find healthier ways to use that energy.
So it's not about like getting rid of it completely.
No, it's more about integrating it.
Integrating it. Okay, I can see that. But it also seems pretty challenging. Like, how do we actually do that?
Well, one thing you can do is start paying attention to those moments when you react in a way that even surprises yourself. Like, maybe you have an outburst or you do something self-sabotaging that's totally out of character.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
Well, a lot of times that's the shadow. So by examining what triggers those moments, you can start to, gain a little more control over your reactions.
Okay, so it's like emotional intelligence training, but for your shadow.
You could say that, yeah.
But this brings up another question. Green also talks a lot about narcissism as one of the fundamental laws of human nature.
Right.
So how does the shadow play into that?
Right, that's a great question. And it's something that Green explores in a lot of detail. It's important to remember that everybody has some degree of narcissism. It's part of our survival instinct, right? It helps us protect ourselves and advance our interests. But when narcissism goes unchecked, it can get pretty toxic.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
leads to manipulation, lack of empathy for others, all those things.
So that's where the shadow comes in, right? Like
Huh.
you can really distort our self-image.
Exactly. The shadow can feed those negative narcissistic tendencies by whispering doubts and insecurities, making us crave external validation to make up for our internal struggles. It can manifest as this need for attention or admiration or a pursuit of power and status.
Wow, so how do we break free from that cycle?
Well, Green believes it's possible, although challenging. And he suggests this powerful path, transforming self-love, which is essential for a healthy ego, into empathy.
Okay, hold on. How do we do that?
Right. So Green gives this really compelling example of this transformation. The story of Ernest Shackleton and his Antarctic expedition. Remember, he and his crew were stranded on the ice for months facing unimaginable hardship.
Oh, yeah. That's an incredible story.
But what's really amazing is that despite everything they were going through, Shackleton was somehow able to keep morale up among his men.
Wow. Under that kind of pressure, it seems impossible.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty remarkable. But the key is that he didn't do it through force or authority. He did it through empathy.
So he wasn't just a leader, he was a student of human nature.
Exactly. He realized that to survive, they needed more than just food and shelter. They needed emotional support. So he started tailoring his interactions with each man based on their personality and needs. He would engage them in conversations about their interests, anticipate their frustrations, even make subtle adjustments to their duties to keep their spirits up.
So even in a life or death scenario, empathy was the key to their leadership and survival.
Absolutely.
And while most of us aren't facing Antarctic blizzards every day, I can definitely see how cultivating that same kind of empathy could have a huge impact on our relationships and, our own leadership skills.
It's a powerful reminder that while we all have our shadow side and these narcissistic tendencies, we also have this incredible capacity for connection and understanding.
It's like a balancing act, recognizing the darker forces inside of us while trying to amplify those qualities that help us connect with other people.
Yeah.
But speaking of the challenges of navigating those human interactions, Greene also talks about this grass is always greener syndrome. And I have to admit, I think we've all been there at some point,
Right,
right?
yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's like everywhere you look these days, someone's got it better, right?
It does feel like that sometimes.
Like this grass is always greener thing is just, I don't know, baked into our culture. Like we're surrounded by images of these perfect lives. And
Unattainable ideals. Yeah.
exactly. It's so easy to start comparing yourself to others and feeling like you're not good enough.
It's not just modern society, though. Greene actually argues that this tendency goes way back. Like, it's deeply rooted in our evolutionary past.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Our ancestors were always on the lookout for new resources and opportunities, driven by this primal urge to survive.
So it's like this survival instinct got kind of rewired for the modern age and turned into this constant need for more, better, different.
Exactly.
Makes you wonder if it's even possible to escape that cycle of comparison and feeling dissatisfied.
It is a challenge for sure, but Greene offers a helpful perspective. He doesn't say we should just deny this desire for more, but instead we should become more aware of how it influences us.
Okay, I see what you mean. Like if we're not aware of it, we're just setting ourselves up to be manipulated.
Exactly. And Greene aptly uses a great story to illustrate this point, the South Sea Bubble.
Oh yeah, the financial scheme that, I don't know, imploded back in the 1700s or
Late
something.
18th century, yeah.
Okay, so what does that have to do with the grass is always greener thing?
Well, at the heart of that whole scheme was this guy, John Blunt. He was a master manipulator. Like, he really understood how to tap into people's desires.
Okay, I'm listening.
So he created this company called the South Sea Company and started spinning these tales of incredible riches to be made from trading in the South Seas. It was brilliant marketing, really. He preyed on people's longing for a better life,
And people bought it.
Hook, line, and sinker. People were mortgaging their homes, selling off everything they own just for a chance to get in on the action.
Sounds a little bit like a historical version of FOMO.
That's a great way to put it. It was totally driven by that fear of missing out. Everyone saw their neighbors getting rich and didn't want to be left behind.
Oof, yeah. And we all know how that ended. The bubble burst and so many people were left with nothing.
It's a pretty stark reminder that if we're not careful, this grass is always greener thinking can lead us to make some really bad decisions.
Absolutely. So maybe a healthy dose of skepticism is a good thing.
Definitely. Helps to protect us from those kinds of schemes.
So speaking of manipulation and power dynamics, Greene also goes into this concept of navigating the court. But I don't think he's talking about like kings and queens and all that.
No, not literal courts. He uses the court as a metaphor for any kind of hierarchical structure.
Okay, so like the workplace, social circle.
Exactly, yeah. Politics, even your family, basically anywhere where there are these power dynamics at play.
So you're saying no matter where you go, there are going to be these patterns of behavior that pop up when people are trying to gain power and influence.
Precisely. And he identifies several courtier types who are particularly skilled at navigating these dynamics.
Courtier types, like what, the gossip monger and the backstabber?
Well, those two, probably. But Greene focuses on a few specific types. One is the jester.
The jester. Okay. I guess I can see them using humor and wit to win people over.
Yeah.
But can you really gain power just by being the funny one?
Well, it can be a risky strategy. Jesters walk a fine line, between being entertaining and insightful and becoming a threat to the people in charge. They use humor to challenge the status quo and sometimes expose hypocrisy.
Okay, I could see how that might ruffle some feathers.
Yeah.
But I guess if they're good at it, they could gain a unique kind of influence. What are the other types?
Another type is the mirror. They're really good at subtle manipulation, reflecting back what people want to hear. They make people feel seen and understood.
It's almost like they're creating a custom echo chamber for each person they're talking to.
That's a good way to put it. They're masters of flattery, and they know how to adapt their approach to different personalities.
Now that you mention it, I think I've met a few mirrors in my life. It's like they can blend in anywhere.
They're social chameleons for sure.
Okay, so jester and mirror. Is there a third type?
Yes, the third one is the stirrer. They love drama and chaos. They'll even create problems so they can be the one to solve them.
Oh, man. I think we've all worked with a stirrer at some point.
They always seem to be in the middle of things, don't they?
Right. And they make it seem so urgent and important that people don't even realize they might be the one who started the problem in the first place.
Exactly. They're masters at creating a distraction.
So how do we deal with these different types? Do we have to become master manipulators ourselves?
Not necessarily. The key is to just be aware of these patterns.
Yeah.
Once you understand their motivations and strategies, you're less likely to get caught in their games.
So it's more about observation than trying to outsmart them.
Exactly. And it's about knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, figuring out how to navigate those power dynamics in a way that feels authentic to you.
Right, like we're putting together this toolkit for understanding people better.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can up our game, so to speak.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of competition and the whole drive to succeed, Greene also talks about aggression. I'm curious to hear how he spins that. I mean, it's usually seen as kind of a negative trait, right?
You're right. It is often seen that way. But Greene argues that it's a lot more complex than we think. He actually highlights this duality of aggression.
What do you mean, duality?
He says it's present in both our destructive and constructive impulses.
Okay, so like the same energy that fuels rage and violence can also fuel ambition and determination.
Exactly. It all comes down to how we channel that energy. He talks about this inner voice we all have, the internal saboteur that tries to hold us back. The one that whispers doubts, makes our fears seem bigger.
Oh, yeah. I know that voice well. The one that says you're not good enough, not smart enough, not brave enough.
Right. And that voice, in a way, is a form of misplaced aggression turned inward. Instead of using that energy to go after our goals, we use it to beat ourselves up.
Wow, that's a really interesting way to look at it. So how do we silence that inner critic and unleash that more positive, constructive aggression?
Greene gives a great example of someone who mastered this. Georges Danton.
Okay, who was he?
He was a key figure in the French Revolution, a real man of action, a powerful speaker who wasn't afraid to challenge the way things were. He didn't shy away from conflict or try to bottle up his aggression. Instead, he used it to fuel his leadership and his fight for the things he believed in.
So he learned to harness his aggression and use it for something bigger than himself.
Precisely. And that's a lesson for all of us. It's not about becoming a jerk or anything. It's about recognizing that aggression can be a powerful force for good and learning to direct it toward the things that really matter to us.
So it's kind of like martial arts, taking something that could be destructive and turning it into a source of strength.
You could say that, yeah.
But how do we make sure we're channeling it in the right direction? I mean, how do we know if we're truly pursuing our purpose or just chasing something fleeting?
That's a great question, and it leads us to another one of Greene's laws, embracing purpose.
Yeah, it's like everybody's talking about finding your purpose these days, but it's more than just a feeling, right?
Right. Greene makes a clear distinction between true purpose and false purpose. True purpose, he says, it drives you to improve yourself, to grow. You feel like you're contributing to something bigger than yourself. It's not just about what you do, it's about why you do it, even when it's hard.
So it's about more than just, I don't know, feeling good or chasing pleasure.
Exactly. It goes deeper than that. And those false purposes, they can lead you down the wrong path.
Okay, so what are some of the signs that you might be on the wrong track?
Well, Greene says look out for things like addiction, blindly conforming to what everyone else is doing, or just feeling cynical about everything. Those false purposes, they might give you a temporary high, but ultimately you end up feeling empty.
So how do you break free from that? I mean, how do you even know what your true purpose is?
Well, it's a journey. But Greene gives some strategies. One is to find something that really absorbs your attention, what he calls flow.
Oh, yeah, I love that feeling. It's like you get lost in what you're doing and time just disappears.
Right. And it's in those moments that you often discover your true passions.
I see what you mean. What else?
Another thing is to find a mentor, Someone who's been there, who can guide you and inspire you.
Yeah, a mentor can make a huge difference, someone who can offer advice and a different perspective.
Exactly. And maybe the most important thing is to resist instant gratification.
So it's about playing the long game, not looking for quick fixes, but really focusing on building something meaningful.
Right. True purpose takes patience and persistence. You gotta be willing to face challenges.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
What?
But that brings us to Greene's final law, dancing with time. And that's a really powerful image. What does he mean by that?
He's talking about our relationship with time, especially our fear of aging and death. Instead of being afraid of time passing, we should embrace it.
So turn that fear into motivation.
Exactly. Use it as a reminder to live more intentionally, to appreciate every moment.
But how do we actually do that? How do we make that shift?
Well, one way is to really think about how short life is and use that to focus on what really matters. Don't waste time on things that don't bring you joy.
So live in the moment and prioritize the things that really matter.
Another way is to focus on the process, not just the outcome. Enjoy the journey, learn from your mistakes.
So it's not about reaching some destination, it's about all the steps along the way.
Right. And finally, think about how you can leave a legacy. Create something that will live on after you're gone.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation. I mean, it's incredible to see how Greene's laws of human nature are at work everywhere we look.
Yeah, it's eye-opening.
But now the real work begins, right? Putting all this into practice.
That's where the real growth happens. It's about taking these insights and using them to build better relationships, make smarter decisions, and ultimately live a more fulfilling life.
So for our listeners out there, here's something to think about. Now that you've learned about these laws, what's one small change you can make this week?
Maybe start paying more attention to body language when you're talking to someone, or practice putting yourself in someone else's shoes, or maybe even just carve out some time to focus on a project you're passionate about.
Remember, understanding human nature is a lifelong journey, and every step we take towards that understanding helps us live more authentically.
So keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep experimenting.
And that wraps up another deep dive. Be sure to check out the laws of human nature and keep exploring these ideas. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.